Hello, hello. Sorry that I missed a few days. If you are in family court health, you know that this is a marathon, not a sprint. And every couple days, you just got to take a few days for yourself. And so, oh, took a few days for myself. Which is kind of like when you stay entrenched in your case and walking through it and understanding like where everything kind of went wrong, or like how systems that are meant to protect women and children are weaponized by abusers. You just have to stay the course and just like go through it and process it and like process your emotions. And one of the things that I've like found is like sometimes you like really do have to like pull yourself out. And I had a really great dinner tonight that I didn't want to go to, that I forced myself to, with Malibu Dallas. Some of you guys know him on Instagram and TikTok, and he's a CPS survivor, and talks a lot about the systems. And then another mom who survived this hell, and so I didn't want to go. I was in a terrible mood. I just wanted to come home and work on my case, but I was exhausted, and I took time to take a friend to make sure that they like had they broke their legs. They needed a ride to like, it was the right leg too. So they needed a ride to get appointments, just sometimes taking a day or like some time away from your case is good for you because it can like help you kind of refocus. But then, that it's like, okay, there's shit in your inbox that's like either going to come out one of two ways. It's going to be, death by 1,000 more paper cuts. And like, this is just like what my workbench looks like now, but there's like thousands and thousands and thousands of pages. I've started putting everything in clear binders so that I can keep track of how many pages there are. And I'm having somebody review it as I go through it, so like I can keep processing it. And I ordered 900 clear sheets, and I'm almost out, and they're double-sided. Like I put 2 pieces of paper in each. So that means that I have so far 18,000 pages, 1,800, sorry, terrible math, 1,800 pages of just documents from 2023 through 2026. But I still have to go through and like add more. And I ordered another 1,200 clear sheets, which I know I'll use. Because like I have to go through and like text messages or like my ex-husband's marriage journal or like any of that. Those are like, 70 pages, or like the responsive documents I just got back from the Monterey Peninsula Unified School District where I was a teacher. So what is that? 1,800 plus 2,400, over 4,000 pages of just chaos. And I'm getting it organized, and that's helping me because I've got it in a timeline. And so now I can like sit with other families or experts who've been through it, and I'm organizing it by like type of abuse, but like I went chronologically. And because you guys know I'm a historian, and I do everything like through public records request, I realized I hadn't done one for the schools directly. And so I went through, and it looks like the school district cleared Gerard Wimby, attorney at law, of Lozano Smith Attorneys at Law, located in Lower Ragsdale. So they're located in Monterey, California. And they CC'd their confidential business and risk management department. So I will say this before I read this and like try to get through it. The school employees who I was in contact with while I was surviving did a really great job of protecting me and helping me get through my teaching year. Could they've done better? Yes. But are our systems set up to help families, or are they set up to just stop the bleed? Um, I just like looking back like I see how my employers at the school district could have done better because it's literally our job as mandated reporters to protect children. And I see how the Army Family Advocacy could have done better. And so, if nothing else, I feel like every time I get one of these emails back and it has 99.9% nonsense or 78 pages of their bylaws, then of course, I'm going to go through and read. There will be one little sliver of good. And even though I read this and I sent it as like a mandated reporter in the school district who's like literally like license dependent upon reporting abuse happening in my home, which I, you know, had shared with other mandated reporters who kept pulling me aside and saying, Autumn, we have to report this, right? And I said, no, I know, but I was still conditioned to protect my abuser. I had grown up with domestic violence and I was still doing that. And I'm sorry for the tears. You guys know I like to get on here lately and just really like give you the facts and give you like, this is what we're doing and like, this is how to power through. But this is also the reality of what we're going through, and you have to just let those feelings come and then find your reason why. And like mine is my beautiful children, Ellie, Evie, and Izzy. And if nothing else, documenting all of this is bringing me peace because there are so many people who are suffering this pain, and being able to have a record of it so that even if there isn't justice in like real time, when my kids are older, I can say, here, babies, like, if you want to know what happened, here's every single piece of evidence. And I'm so sorry that this was your childhood. And, the same thing happened to me. And I remember when I was in college coming across my parents' divorce papers online. And I started reading through it. And I just was like, I remember like at like 20 something years old, just being like, what a fucking waste. Like, what a waste. What a fucking waste of just everything. When like pride and ego and resentment, but like that's the thing, like domestic violence is generational. And so if like I can go and I can look at it like in my family history of my parents' high conflict divorce, and then I'm now in a high conflict divorce, despite the fact that every turn I'm like, please, please, please just stop, I surrender. Like I was reading a visitation report and it says mother waved a white flag. And you go back to those days and you're like, oh my God, like what? Like, would I go back to that day? Would I go back to that time and pray? But like, I remember waving that flag and the look he gave me was like it was so evil. It was so vengeful. He was like, fuck you. How dare you wave a white flag, you? And I just remember being like, oh no, please, 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 please. And I'd stop participating with the family advocacy program because my whole family said, Autumn, it's going to cost him his career and it's not that bad. You just need to deal with it. Don't air your dirty laundry. Like, and I just remember thinking, like, is that what they would tell me to tell my babies? And I just knew, like, it was the lie. I just knew that, like, I had grown up in that. But I was the adult in the room now. And I had to be the one to make the decision of whether or not I would allow my kids to think that that was okay. And I chose not to. go back, and I mean, the number of times it does take most women an average of 7 attempts to leave their abusers. And when we go through my records, then you run them through AI, there's such a clear pattern here, and I've got a couple experts who've been going over, like, specific portions of them and pulling them out because it's hard to, like, when you have, like, almost 4,000 pages of documents that, like, of the documents that actually made it into court, 98% of them were his documents, and it's like nobody has seen my side because I think a couple videos ago, I showed you guys this motion in limine that I didn't even know existed from August 29th, 2024, where it basically says, like, the wife can't present any evidence of domestic violence, and it's like, I didn't even know that existed, but at least going through and finding it, like, gave me the peace to know that, like, I wasn't stupid. I wasn't foolish. Like, I was advocating so fucking hard for my kids. So hard. And, like, I was advocating for my kids and my grandkids because I wanted to break this cycle. And I couldn't figure out why Commissioner Mendoza wouldn't allow evidence. She, like, wouldn't let me, like, present anything, and I was like, "How am I not allowed to show you this? Like, it doesn't make any sense." And then you go and you see that, like, 4 months prior, his lawyer submitted an oral motion in limine, meaning there is no paperwork for it. There's quite literally just like, "Hey, we don't think you should be able to present any evidence from, like, just these random dates because, like, just because." And that's all it says, like, she shouldn't be allowed to present these, and you're like, "What?" And then it's like, literally, they know it's all the evidence that I have, but not all the evidence that I have, but at that time, they knew it was, like, the most damning. Um, and so again, I have to just continue to be like, "This is being investigated at the highest levels. There are so many eyes on this." The Presidio of Monterey Police are reviewing literally everything I post, literally everything I share, and I know the district, attorney in Monterey California is reviewing a lot of this, and I hope they are. Like, if nothing else, I hope that you guys watch and see what you did. And, like, if you have any type of a heart, you stop for 2 seconds and you think, "Oh, man, this is a member of our community that we destroyed. These are 3 kids whose lives we destroyed." By not living up to our own policies, our own procedures, not to mention state and federal guidelines and laws. But the thing that just kills me, and I pray, like, I sat here reading this, it's, 1 in the morning, and I don't know why I optimistically thought tonight was the night that I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna open it. I'm gonna look really quick. I'm gonna print it, and it might actually be good news." And it is. There's one little piece of good news that I'm gonna read. But I hope that the City of Monterey Police Department, the Monterey County DA, the Monterey City Police, or Monterey County Police, Monterey County Sheriff, Pacific Grove Police. I hope if you guys recognize me, and when we get the body camera footage uploaded and, like, shared, those of you who tried to help, and you'll see who you are. You're the heroes. You tried. You did the right thing. I hope you know that God is watching. And for whatever reason, he's using me and my voice and my ability to, like, show up in this form, as vulnerable as can be, knowing this could and would and might be used against me. Look how unstable the mother is. She's on the internet crying, and one day she's writing things on the board and saying this, and this, and the next she's on here crying. I'm sharing my lived experience in real time to save others' lives. Because if I didn't have another mom here with me tonight, who knows what I have gone through because she lived it. And when I think about the scale of our experiences, I at least know that my kids, I pray to God that my kids have so many eyes on them, that by notifying all these people, that they were at least finally looking at the evidence, even if they're not going to release it. I have to know that me just putting it out there and getting a response from the district's lawyers, which I'm certain that this cost them several $1,000s to produce, because they have footnotes, they have government codes. I mean, they did their due diligence, and I'll get through it, and I'll go back and we'll do it again, and we'll do another one, and we'll do another one, and we'll refine it, and we will make it so that once my case is done, anybody who's been through this, I'll have I'm working with other advocates in this space. We will have a playbook for you. We will have a solution manual for you. We will have if this, do this, click here, download app. We will have it very straightforward for you, so you don't have to go through this. But in the meantime, me coming on and sharing this, I hope is at least getting people's attention that we're rising and we are coming together as other harmed parents, who a lot of parents have their kids back and they stay in this fight. And that's the thing for me. I'm not reunited with my kids yet. It's coming. It'll be soon. And I know when it is. It's it will be in God's glorious timing. And God never leads us to something if he's not going to lead us through it. And I had someone tonight who'd met one of my girlfriends, and he goes, gosh, she really believes in the Lord. He goes, she literally thinks the Lord answers her prayers. And I said, yeah. And he goes, even with everything that she's been through and her kids have been through. Because that's the thing. Even after you get your babies back, the damage that's been done by the system or by the abusers or by whoever they have been with when you've been separated as a parent, that damage is still there. Sometimes physically, obviously emotionally, definitely mentally, psychologically, but also spiritually. And this person who asked me, goes, well, do you believe in God? I looked at him and I said, of course I believe in God. I wouldn't still be standing if I didn't believe in God. And he goes, but with everything you guys have been through, how can you, he's like, I've lost, loved ones. I've gone through things. He's like, but I can't even conceptualize what you're living through. And both of you are such women of faith. And for whatever reason, you believe that God is going to help you or has. And even though really bad things have happened, and I keep saying well, at least in my case, I know that every time I make a request, I put those institutions on notice that there is someone watching and there is somebody who's holding them accountable and there is a record. This is documented. And even if no one pays attention now, someday they might. Someday maybe they'll use this in domestic violence training manuals. Someday maybe they'll use this in college classes, training social workers or other advocates. Right now I'm doing something called EFT. It's emotional freedom technique. Tapping is another name for it. And essentially what you're doing is you're activating your autonomic nervous system so that you can continue to speak and move through the emotions that you're having. And it kind of stuns your your nervous system into self-regulating itself because there's an external stimuli. And this is usually the first thing that I'll do when I have a student who's in distress or a parent that I might be encountering. And I say, hey, I'll come up and I'll be like, hey, it's okay. And I'll say, can I touch you? Are you okay? Can I put my hand on you? Yeah. Or I'll say, can I give you a hug? And if they allow touch, then I start with a gentle tap, even if it's just on their shoulder or behind. So if you know somebody who is maybe going through this and a hug is not going to help them decompress, a gentle tapping. If you're doing it to yourself, the sternum really helps. It helps remind you to remember to breathe and come back into your center. And just to know that there There's always a reason, there's always a purpose. This too shall pass, you know? And like I said, I'm not one of the parents that has made it out on the other side yet. But when I see the parents who have, and I see that they're still carrying this in their bodies, I see that that is a space that is going to need to be filled by someone or some, you know, someone's. And we're starting to see these support groups pop up. I know the Family Justice and Accountability Act has one. It is just a safe space to start to share and unpack what happened. And with the rise of survivors' voices, I think we're going to see more and more of that. And, you know, not that you need permission to cry, but if watching me cry and then be able to say, like, hey, I'm doing this to create a record so that if you're feeling really alone right now and just wondering why God put you through this or put your kids through this, that there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands more like us out there. And we might not know each other, but maybe someday we will. And I was just talking to Dallas, and I didn't give him the acknowledgement as he said this, but Dallas, if you're watching, or I'll talk to you about it tomorrow. You were talking about doing public speaking events, and I really think that that's what we need next, is just like healing in this space for all the parents and children that have gone through this. And I'm about to get ready to go do my first like child intervention with some kiddos who went through some really hard stuff. And as a licensed educator, I know that in order for me to be able to show up and give them what they need, I need to be grounded, and I need to be whole, and I need to be centered. And I need to take like what my kids and I are going through and set it aside, just like I did for years when I was teaching. You know, I left it at the door and I went in and I did the best that I could by my students. But the reason why I share that, and the reason why I'm the one that's going to go do this intervention with these kiddos, is because this family went through something so hellacious, and they were so deeply wronged by the systems that they have lost all faith in any institution, any doctor, any lawyer, any social worker, any teacher. And considering the fact that my mother was my doctor growing up, I never had a pediatrician. My stepfather was a doctor and also an abuser, who my mother, a doctor, let in the house for years on end, as well as other abusers throughout the years. Doctors were not always a safe option for me. In fact, they never were until the Amen clinics. They were the first safe doctors I ever had. Dr. Ellerson, Dr. Jones. Those were my first two real safe ones where I felt like they seemed to understand what was going on. And then they helped me come out and share and find the strength to leave, all that. But, you know, I went through many, many years of not trusting the doctors in my life, or any doctors. And then being a mandated reporter in the school systems, I've now lost a lot of trust with the schools, with the public schools, with social workers. And obviously, you guys know my feelings on family advocacy through the United States military. But all that to say, like, it takes somebody who's been to hell and back so many times, that when you know there are children suffering, you can't just say to the parent, well, go do this. No, because they've been so harmed by the institutions that were meant to protect them, that the sense of institutional betrayal is so deep that those children may never get the help that they need. And so we need to start to discuss what that is going to look like. And it's trauma-informed educators. It's people like me who, when I first entered family court and CPS, I just figured, if you got your kids taken, you probably did something. I mean, I'm a teacher. I report this kind of stuff. And then when you understand it and you unpack it, you really realize, wow, like this is deep. and this is systemic, and it is generational. And sadly, it is intentional. Okay. But with all that said, I'm going to read one thing from my records request, which, I'm going to post all this. You guys will see all these because these are public records requests. And I will say this, the school did a good job here, or the county lawyers, they did a good job pointing out that if you do a public records request, that information then becomes public record, meaning anybody can go find this. So they protected my kids by not releasing anything, which sucks because then, of course, they didn't release it to me either. But this was through a CPRA, like a California Public Records Act request. And I did this initially just to see what they would disclose because there's other avenues that are already like at play. And we wanted to see like what would come back from which institution. And honestly, I feel like the fact that they took as long as they did to respond is good. So they took 10 days to respond, which means that they sent this immediately. And they didn't give a lot of emails back, but basically, our firm represents the Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, which is in receipt of your California Public Records Act. Specifically, you requested, this request seeks district maintained administrative and reporting records. It does not request confidential student education reports, psychological files, or special education reports protected under FERPA or California Education Code 49076. Any such protected information may be appropriately redacted. Time period was May 1st, 2022 through present. I said, please conduct a search of district records, including but not limited to site administration, human resources, student services, counseling services, school nurses, Title IX offices, mandated reporter logs, and communications with outside agencies. The reason why this is important for you to go through the exercise of doing is to put your district on notice. I didn't do this because I thought that they were going to send anything back. I knew they were going to tell me to kick rocks. I knew full well they were going to tell me to kick rocks. But what I did this for was to get my kids on their radar. This is the same thing I did with another mother who is parenting from another state. And there was a sleepover situation that was permitted. And in today's environment, she just was like, oh, my kids are too small for this. Like, it's not. And I said, no. I said, you're absolutely right. I said, call the place and ask for their childcare license. And she was like, what's that? And I said, okay, here. And I looked it up, found the county, found the whatever, sent her the license information. She goes, well, I wouldn't even know how to do it. And I said, okay, well, let me do it for you. So I called and I said, hi, I'm a mandated reporter and I'm just calling to check your licensing status. Would you mind letting me speak to a supervisor? And they said, what's it regarding? I said, well, you are advertising online that you're having an overnight event for children ages 4 through 12. And I just want to get some more details because that's a broad range of students or children. And if it's going to be a co-ed event, there needs to be specific, rules that they follow, meaning keeping boys and girls separate overnight. The supervisors have to be awake all night. There has to be shift logs, and what's the other thing? Oh, and the 4 and 12-year-olds, because of the gap in ages, there have to be age appropriate bathroom, et cetera, and sleeping arrangements. And so I called, and of course they didn't have their, license on file, and the supervisor wasn't available. And so I said, okay, well, that's fine. And then I gave them their license number. I said, hey, you guys might just want to post this somewhere. He goes, okay. And, we documented it and then talked to the mom. And I said, how do you feel about, that call that we just made? And she said, I don't feel like they're going to do enough. They're not doing anything to protect my kids. And and I said, no, you just did. You called, you asked for their information in advance, and you said, I'm watching you. And what you did is, if you were afraid that something might happen, you lowered the threshold for your children being vulnerable to predation, meaning you said, not these ones. If there's going to be a perv there, if there's going to be a predator in this space, you have just flagged your 2 kids as, these ones aren't easy pickings. That mom's going to call. That mom's going to bother. That mom's going to hover. These 2, no. Move on to different kids. And that is sadly what predators look for. And we have predators in CPS, we have predators within our school districts. And having taught in multiple school districts, I have come across fellow teachers who they just give you the like they skeeve, and you're just like, oh, like there's something that like shudders in your soul and you can't put a finger on it. Or sometimes you can, and it's very blatant. When I taught overseas in a school in South America, there was this one older man. He was a British teacher, and he used to let his students come and sit on his lap, and he'd be bouncing them. Mind you, this is high school. These are high school girls. He was like bouncing on his lap, and I was like, yeah, we have a predator in our midst. And the stories that I heard when I was serving overseas with the U.S. Embassy, I was a community liaison coordinator, and I would have to go and do school inspections and site inspections. And sadly, that is where a lot of predators go. They go to these international environments because the reporting is much less, and it's just easier for them to slip through the cracks. So where I was going with all this is I did records requests for my children. I knew they were going to come back like kick rocks, like, hey, get out of here. You should know better than to ask us this. And I'm like, of course I know better to ask you this. I just wanted to get it on record. And I wanted you guys to know that I'm watching and the world is watching. And we want to see how you are going to protect children moving forward. And more importantly, how you're going to protect educators. Because here's the best part in my situation. I was both a mandated reporter because my children and I were being harmed, but I was also an employee, which means there were other employment laws that should have kicked in and employment protections. And that actually goes for my employers at Pebble Beach as well, who have themselves quite the predicament because they, whatever, it's just not worth it. It's not worth that conversation because I'm not trying to like people who didn't do the right thing because they weren't trained to do the right thing, or they didn't know how to do the right thing, or there's like, whoa, this is like one of those like really insidious situations, or they just like want to keep it quiet because it's like a small town. That's not who I'm here to like attack. I'm here to educate them and say like, hey, here's how we work around this, or here's how we grow through this as a society, as we're going through this massive awakening of like, this is like the number of people who didn't know that this was like happening around the world and are like waking up to it are like, holy shit. I'm like, yeah, it's dark. And for whatever reason, God has given me the ability to like sit with it and work through it. And maybe it's just because of the ugliness I've seen in the world. I can, do what I need to do. All that said, not so worried about what they didn't do for my kids because, as I said, I was an employee, which is where it gets interesting. Okay. Okay, so mandated reporter documentation, I obviously knew that wasn't going to come back. I just wanted to get it on their radar. Next one was student safety and welfare actions, records showing district response to safety disclosures concerning domestic violence in the home, child endangerment concerns, safety planning for the students while at school, Title IX or student welfare assessments, mandated reporter consultations with administrators or district personnel, and then communication with outside agencies, all non-privileged communication between MPUSD personnel and Monterey County Department of Social Services /CPS, law enforcement agencies, military family advocacy program representatives, victim advocacy or domestic violence agencies, regarding safety concerns involving the children listed below. Employee reporting, this is where I knew I'd hit pay dirt. Employee, and again, you got to be strategic with these FOIAs. You have to know that like you got to pad it so that like you put the thing up front that they're going to deny, so that they're like, oh, like, and they deny. And then they get down to the last one. They're like, well, we got to give her something because like there is stuff here. Because even the ones that they denied, I could actually go back in and approach from a different manner. And I have, and I'm going to continue to do that. But you give them something at the very bottom where they're like, oh, I guess we should give her this because we have to give her something. And this is the easiest one to give her without getting us in too much trouble or maybe it'll make us look good. which is obviously what I wanted in the first place. I padded it at the top to make sure that they denied any and everything because I knew they would. But I wanted to see what grounds they would give so that when we do our next rebuttal, we can already cite that we did it the first way, knowing they were going to say no. And then we invoke a law that I'll teach you guys about later. Okay, so employee reporting and workplace protections. Because I was an employee during this reporting period, I also request records reflecting documentation that I made reports as a mandated reporter under Penal Code 1166, any internal district responses to my safety disclosures as an employee, any workplace safety evaluations, duty of care assessments, or administrative responses related to domestic violence, safety risks affecting a district employee, any communications between site administration and human resources regarding my safety concerns as an employee, any documentation reflecting protections afforded under California whistleblower statutes, student records, exemptions, and restraining orders. Okay. This is like their kind of blanket, kiss off. Okay, so they go through. Okay, so one, they basically say the big thing that they said was the request for records reflecting child abuse or neglect reports, should they constitute student records, will not be available to you because they're exempt from disclosure under CPRA, person to the above, and due to the restraining order against me, which, remember, my ex obtained that. And initially, he, of course, didn't prevent me from their medical or their legal access or anything like that. Medical, legal, the other school, all that. And then he realized I was still reporting. And then Commissioner Mendoza was like, the mother used these agencies to report the father. It's like, nope, I simply met my mandate. And if I didn't, I would have lost my license. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. We have these policies to protect children. We are mandated reporters because, like doctors, who take an oath to do no harm to their patients. We are mandated reporters and are the first line of defense for vulnerable children. So if I don't report it, I could lose my license. But if I do report it, then my weaponized ex-husband can claim that I'm committing litigation abuse by reporting him. Again, make it make sense. But this is where the proof in the pudding comes. I'm not the only one that documented this. There's so many other witnesses who saw it. And like I said, I kept a journal, and not just like not a journal like my ex kept, which is very interesting because how easy is it to type something up and go back and be like, oh, on this date I did that. Like, okay. And you printed it out. Like, dear diary, today I created a fake journal and I backdated it by these dates. And when you look at it, like, it really was backdated. It's hilarious versus a journal that looks like this. See, there's a whole week that I just didn't do anything. I don't know what I did those days. I'd have to go and I'd have to look at my emails. This is what real evidence looks like. This is what escaping domestic violence looks like. Not a manufactured, transcript that Dan, my ex, transcribed himself. Oh, okay, cool. Should we do rebuttal evidence? But when you have a motion in limine from a corrupt attorney. So anyways, this is what real evidence looks like and why it's so important to keep, because I asked the school for these records. They didn't label their pages. That's a bummer. I really wish they would have. All right, let's go back through. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Item D, employee reporting and workplace protections. In response to item D, any documentation that you claim to have made that I claim to have made. Yeah, claim to have made it. As a mandated reporter will not be available to you because CANA reports are confidential and exempt. Notably, the law does not permit mandated reporters to have access to related information on records after their report is made, explicit circumstances that are not applicable here. So that's why I always keep a copy of whatever reports I make, or like for myself or for students. Nevertheless, first bit of good news. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bottom of the 4th page in, second to last paragraph. Nevertheless. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we might be getting to something that we can actually use here. Following a diligent and reasonable search, the district discovered some email communications that appear to include purported safety concerns you raised with agencies wholly outside of the district. It was the Army, and I CC'd the district because the schools where I taught were located on a military base, and my ex-husband weaponized the base commander, Colonel Klein, to prevent me from earning money as a way to force me back into the marriage. Anyways, pretty classic, right? Notably, these communications include you as the direct sender and or recipient and do not involve the district or district business in any form or fashion, but include a copy to a district employee. Wait. In the spirit of transparency, the district is providing you these records in the attached enclosure. As a reminder, it is important to understand that records produced in response to CPRA requests are considered public records. You don't say. So that means it's not a confidential part of my family law case. That means it's now available to anybody who wants to file their own CPRA, California Public Records Access request, and get this information. And I sure hope you do, because the first 76 pages of it are literally just their district policies. And then the last however many pages are something else. What? It's their the emails. Sorry. Gosh, I'm tired. The tapping works though. Did you see how I went from being like really like to like this? I can't remember where I was. I mean, it was like on a court thing. And I was doing this. And they tried to be like, and the mother is like, acting erratic and touching. And it's like, I'm like, this is literally a like this is something that they teach you to like ground. So back off my ADA accommodation. You punk, and get informed. Okay. In the spirit of transparency, the district is providing you these records in the attached enclosure. As a reminder, it's important to understand that records produced in response are considered public record. Indeed, once a record is disclosed pursuant to CPRA, it becomes available to any member of the public who wants to submit a similar request. And then they cited Arden v. City of Los Angeles. Public entities are prohibited from selectively disclosing records to one member of the public and not others. Therefore, the district is providing you with this information as a courtesy from the district as your past employer and not person to the CPRA. Okay, so the district is providing these to me as my past employer, which means that the confidentiality lies with me. So just like when you're with a lawyer and they're like, well, this is, what do they call it? Attorney-client privilege. And they'd be like, well, this is privilege and I don't want you like having a witness or anything like that. You're like, okay, well, it's my privilege to waive. So I'm choosing to waive it because anything that I say, I hope can and will get used in a court of law, because now that I know how selective it can be, you want more information out there, because then you can say, okay, now this, now this, now this, now this. So this is not pursuant to a CPRA. This is as the district's employee. But again, I did it through a CPRA so that they would all be like, whoa, what are we going to release here? Because then that's available to everybody. So like I really knew that they wouldn't, but they kind of like gave me the breadcrumbs of where to go next. So even if what they give you isn't what you wanted, they will give you something. They'll crumb you out. And then you go through and you look at the government codes and you go like, there's got to be an exemption in there. And yes, you guys, AI can help you with this. My friend Dallas apparently is doing an AI app. And I was like, wait a second, can we add a feature where you can put down all of the receipts from the lawyers who have swindled you, or the, the psych evaluators or whatever. And you can keep like a running ledger, and then you can like bill them. Whatever. He's like, yeah, sure, let's have that. Okay, here we go. Further, the district is providing you with relevant board policies and administrative regulations in response to your request for any workplace safety evaluations, duty of care assessments, or administrative responses related to domestic violence safety risks affecting a district employee. So I asked them, I said, I want every single, oh my God. You guys, this is why God chooses the parents that he has chosen and the children he has chosen to be in this battle. Because I knew what I was asking for. I knew what I was asking for. I hoped that I was going to get this just like on a silver platter. Like, here's all the fucked up shit that your ex did and all the people who reported him, and now your children are safe. They didn't do that. But what they did was they created a record showing that I tried to advocate for my children across time and space, and they validated that there are records. They're just not going to give them to me under a public records release, which is, again, advocating for my kids because that's protecting them and their anonymity. But what they did give me was relevant board policies, meaning the school board, and administrative regulations. So this is what you're going to want to ask for. When you ask for your public records releases from your children's school district, you're going to say, we are requesting your board policies and administrative regulations in response to any workplace safety evaluations. And then you would say for educators in your district. So if you aren't a teacher in your child's school district, or you're not employed by the school district, you're then requesting it as a tax-paying citizen. So like anybody could make this request in any district. And you will say, I'm requesting any workplace safety evaluations, duty of care assessments, or administrative responses related to domestic violence safety risks affecting a district employee, and any documentation reflecting protections afforded under California whistleblower statutes. They said, following a diligent and reasonable search, the district has no records related to any internal district responses to my safety disclosures as an employee. Accordingly, enclosed with the transmission of the correspondence, the district is providing you with all responsive, non-exempt documents in its possession. Meaning, well, we don't have anything like that from you. They do, and I will find those and obviously send them back and be like, hey guys, go ahead and go back and check, because you definitely do. And I'll just have to go through and go like at MPUSD sent, like in my sent folder, I'll pull up at MPUSD, extract all those emails, and then send them to them, be like, please look at these emails between these dates and these, please look at any correspondence between me and this email at this date to this time. Because even if they don't send you a response, there will be metadata of that. Okay. Notwithstanding the foregoing, and to reiterate, please be advised that the following types of documents and or information will not be made available to you because they are exempt from disclosure under the CPRA. Record entries or portion thereof that are student records, which are exempt from disclosure. Yeah, we know that. Records of the disclosure of which is exempted or prohibited pursuant to federal or state law. Okay, knew that. Those records where, on balance, the public interest served by not disclosing the record clearly outweighs the public interest served by disclosure of the record. Again, this is why until you become like a surgeon with a scalpel and know how to do your requests, like with the Army, I know where to go and I know how to. And I've got like a couple emails out to like the commanding generals of the JAG Corps who haven't responded yet. And I'm like, ooh, the longer you guys wait to respond, the more I know that you're actually looking at this shit, and you're looking up my last name, and you're looking up my case, and you're looking up Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Seibel. And so it's like, I didn't expect a response right away. In fact, a response right away is usually actually a bad indicator. The longer they wait, the more like my email goes like, hey, did you want to follow up on this? And I'm like, I did actually. I'll touch in like the end of the week. I'll touch in. I'll send a little email. I am an email terrorist. You do not want to negotiate with me in your inbox because I will just continue to I'm like, I got nothing but time on my hands. Okay. So again, until you know how to do your requests, your records requests, like a surgeon, just scattershot them, but don't waste it on an entity that's not worth it. Like go broad, right? Go with a DA or go with like a school counselor or go like depending on what the specifics of your case are. Like mine, I was trying to get at my records requests because I wanted to know how, as an educator, how the school didn't protect me and my kids because they knew that there was domestic violence. So, and I was like still going through it and I was relatively private and quiet and I just wanted like, just to get through it. Okay. Please note that to the extent your request was partially denied, you are hereby advised that pursuant to Government Code Section 7922.540 sub D, that Ryan Altemeyer, Associate Superintendent, Business Services, is the person responsible for the partial denial of your requests. Given the above and with this production, the district considers this request fulfilled and the matter closed. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Claire Gerald Wimbley of Lozano Smith, and then they CC'd Heidi Lizarbe, Administrative Assistant, Confidential Business and Risk Management. Again, that shows me that they took this shit seriously. The school district, within 10 days, sent this to a lawyer and got the lawyer to write a 6-page response from the Confidential Business and Risk Management Department. And again, this is how you form your basis for federal and state lawsuits that change policy. This isn't about money. This is about policy, and it's about making sure that survivors and children are safe. So with that, I'm going to show you what they gave me. Here we go. Gosh, does anybody get sick of what a big nerd I am? Actually, wait, I will read you this so that you know why I'm doing this, because every now and then people give me flowers and they cheer me on and they're like, hey, this is so good for you. You're doing great. So one of our viewers, an amazing hero who's going through their own family law stuff. And again, like I said, once I get into a better place, I will definitely tell you guys how we did this as a community, because I'm not doing this alone. I'm learning. So they said, they were talking about how they were doing their evidence. And then she said, she goes, you have to also go through this process per the court of removing metadata from each file. Okay, this is after redactions. Okay, feel like there could be a whole class on that. I watched your recording. Glad you are getting into the FERPA. The lives are, she goes, the lives are a great look for you. As you learn, you should do one on evidence, what makes strong evidence, self-authenticating versus the need for copies, judicial notice on stuff already filed, public records, and getting stuff argued before you even get into the courtroom so you do not have to argue it in real time. And then a whole other session for proper foundation, saying it is an accurate and true representation and how to pick witnesses to set foundation if needed. That would help moms to start to think what usable evidence is versus you have a record, what usable evidence is versus you have a recorded phone call that is illegal and you can't use. So strategy versus the emotional mistakes mamas use. Yeah. So like moms, we're like freaking, documentation warriors, but we might not always have something that we can use. And it's like, you have to really weigh the pros and cons of whether or not it's worth using. Okay. So here is the email that the district sent back. Let's go. So what they sent back was 78 pages, which God bless them. That's amazing. Let's go ahead and print that and add it to our file. Okay, print. Now, here's what they gave me. Board Policy Manual, Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, printed on the 12th of February 2026 at 1:50 p.m. Adopted. Employee safety, last revised, Okay, so they went through and they gave me all of their information. So no employee shall be discharged or discriminated against for exercising any right regarding employee safety or health specified in making a report, criminal. So this is good information that I'm going to put into like a class. Like I'm going to teach this. Did they give me links? Do these have hyperlinks? No. Oh, no, they don't. Okay, bummer. But I can still go through and I can do this. So they did all of their policies. Here's the code that I could cross-reference. for any kind of dismissal, employee notifications, risk management, work-related injuries, employee security, accidents, illness leave. So like this, the school has multiple ER reports from when, he put me in the ER and I had to take the day off work. Okay. Here we go. Employee safety. Employee safety. The superintendent or designee shall provide safety devices and implement safety guards. Okay. So then we can go through, we can look at this policy, right? This is good. This is what I wanted. I wanted all their policies. I wanted what they were going to do, what they were going to say. Now, what I want to do is come all the way down. Employee safety. Okay, I love this. Look how much they gave me. And then we can go and see how complaints concerning district employees. It's like, here we go. So this is how I'll get my lawsuit if I choose to pursue one. I don't know if I will or won't. I mean, I'm pretty happy that they are at least taking the time to do this, which means they put money into it. I mean, they were pretty thorough. Look at this. This is 50, 60, 70. Okay, here we go. So the first 66 pages are policy. The last 10 are emails. Okay. Forward message. LTC victim rape record subpoena for City of Monterey, California. So I sent this, or no, when was this sent? Oh, I didn't send this. Okay, so Kim Lammy, have to look her up. Leslie Barrow sent this on Tuesday, February 10th at 3:19. For PRA, so public records access, right? I think that's what that means. I assume. I'll definitely double check. Lillian Kelly, she is a godsend, such a sweet person, a hero. And then Leslie Barrow is a teacher that I worked with. Or no, not a teacher. She's the supervisor that I reported to. So, and I can go back and I can look. And I have not spoken negatively about Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, and I don't intend to. I, really enjoyed my time as an educator there. I wish they had better policies to protect teachers, and maybe I'll be able to work with them and the Presidio of Monterey. Which, like, the more I think about it, like, that actually might be how this goes down. Is that I become an educator or like a trainer to like go in and be like, "Hey guys, I used to teach in these classrooms. Little did you know." I would spend my evenings in the ER or hiding in my kids' room praying, or in the closet praying to God that he would save me and I could get out of my horrible marriage. Okay. So if we go back to my, notes, okay, can't find my military ID. Last time I used it was ? Emailed MPUSD, Monterey Peninsula Unified School District on 12/18/2023, waiting for a response. Dr. Mursky appointment at 10 a.m. Reported DV. Told to contact FAP. FAP notified me Dan's IDC is moved from December 19th to 1/3. Waiting to hear from Pernick before scheduling/attending. Ellie and Evie don't know where I've been. Are scared at home. Email from Dan to Attorney Perlman complaining about Christmas visitations. MPUSD said, Monterey Peninsula Unified School District said, I'm on pause and inactive to receive jobs due to the arrest. 4-hour visitation, There's more in here where it talks about MPUSD, but we'll get to the part where I actually had to go in and state my case. God, you guys, these notes are going to be chef's kiss. Chef's kiss, because I kept all of their names. It's like even people I have forgotten, like people I didn't have emails for in the early days or like didn't communicate with via email, like they only called me. I still wrote it down because I'm an external processor and I can't remember things that well. So I like write it down and then I refer to my notes. My teacher, my master teacher, what's his name? Bob Rogers taught me to do that. Okay, so this says from Lillian Kelly back on October 9th. Just FYI, I have been CC'd on a number of these emails coming from a previous substitute. Next, I haven't substitute there since 2024. And I always keep her CC'd. I always keep again, to keep the record. She said, in this email, Elizabeth Autumn Seibel, you met with her once, and I sure did, has mentioned MPUSD for the first time. It was in a positive light, and she mentioned us, but just wanted to put this on your radar in case anything more comes of it. I can forward you the other emails as well if you need. It seems that she is really focused on the Army and their lack of protection for her, but I just want to cover all bases, which Lily and Kelly, like, God bless you. You are a mom yourself now, and like, God bless you. Like, you never responded to this email, but just to see that you did advocate. I mean, you protected the school district, but you also were like, this mom was one of our teachers. Like, and so, anyways, this was from her to, just like all of these military contacts, Christopher Capozzi, who are all these people? Emily McCormick. These are all just military people. Some of them I'll be suing. Some of them are just witnesses. Some like Rep Nick Begich, right? Okay. Oh, that's right. I had just been in his office. October. Okay. Miss Volger, thank you. Oh, who was Miss Volger? She was the one I was trying to get the records from. Ms. Volger, thank you for your response. I appreciate the time you've taken to reply. Your message, however, is not trauma-informed and seeks to obscure the central failure here. The United States Army, through the Family Advocacy Program, FAP, Criminal Investigation Division, CID, and Medical Command, MCOM, had every opportunity and obligation to obtain and protect the records in question, and failed to do so. Now, when those same records suddenly surface via subpoena in a civilian context, your response is to disclaim all knowledge and insist it has nothing to do with the Army. That is not a statement of fact. It is an assumption, and the official record does not work with assumptions. It demands facts. The United States Army, however, continues to rely on plausible deniability through individual actors whose egregious failures and willful disregard for duty constitute violations of my rights and my children's rights, violations that may be actionable under the 14th Amendment and other applicable federal and state laws, as this matter proceeds through civilian review and litigation. I understand you are new to this case, Ms. Volger, and in that spirit, I will extend the professional courtesy of a brief review. It is not only plausible that the Army is connected to the subpoena, it is entirely likely. The fact that Ms. McCormick, who received my initial full medical outcry of sexual assault while I was under Army care in December 2023, is now deflecting this critical survivor concern to your office instead of directly addressing it herself, only underscores the systemic failures within Army victim advocacy. Her refusal to deconflict the issue illustrates the rot at the root of the problem: institutional avoidance dressed up as process. Here's why. While I was employed by Pebble Beach Company in the summer of 2024, the Director of Security personally coordinated with the Army CID agents to facilitate a secure location on Pebble Beach property where I could safely turn over evidence of sexual assault and physical abuse to military investigators. This arrangement was made at my place of work in collaboration with military personnel. Disclosures were made during work hours on employer premises with the knowledge of CID, Army Criminal Investigation Division. If CID or MedCom continued to communicate with my employer after that point, which is entirely within the realm of possibility, then your claim that no one in the Army had anything to do with the request becomes deeply questionable. You are not in a position to offer categorical denials without verifying the full scope of communication between CID, FAP, MedCom, and Pebble Beach Company. If you are not willing to unequivocally assert with full awareness of the legal consequences that no one in the Army initiated, requested, facilitated, or coordinated the subpoena in any way, then I ask you to put that on record with your full name, title, and the date. But if it later emerges that such communication did occur, then you will have been documented as knowingly misrepresenting the facts and obstructing a survivor's access to truth. You're not okay. So the reason why I was doing this was to create I was trying to create a record of the fact that the Army had known about these disclosures going back to Family Advocacy knew going back to December 2023. Military like actors like Army Housing goes back to April 2023. JAG Judicial Court goes back to June 2023. Like everybody knew at every institutional level. So her being like, we didn't know about this. I'm like, shut up. You guys knew. Someone in the Army knew. But if you want to be the one to put your stamp on it, be like, we didn't know. Okay, go ahead. Like, I'll take you as the witness that I can, put up on the stand and impeach. Sounds good. I said, you are not in a position to offer categorical denials without verifying the full scope of communications between CID, FAP, MedCom, and Pebble Beach Company. If you are not willing to unequivocally, okay, where to put that? I said, you are not responding in a vacuum. You are responding to a sexual assault survivor in her second year of trauma-informed sexual assault and domestic violence recovery, a professional educator with valid teaching credentials in 3 U.S. states, which has made me for 17 plus years and continues to make me a mandated reporter of known or suspected child abuse and a published United States Army historian, as well as a former State Department employee, invoking her rights under, and then I list all of them, the Army Family Advocacy Programs, the DOD Family Advocacy Programs, HIPAA, privacy laws, VAWA, which is the Violence Against Women's Act, the California Evidence Code for Rape Crisis Counseling Communications, the California Welfare and Institutions Code, and then, which includes failure to act on animal abuse, that's the UCMJ, a known co-occurring factor in domestic violence and child abuse. Okay. I said, you continue to deny that Family Advocacy Program had any role, despite the fact that during my time as an active client under Family Advocacy Program care beginning in November 2023, Ms. McCormick had knowledge of my reports of sexual and physical abuse by a uniformed service member, animal abuse occurring in my home with minors by a uniformed service member, my ongoing contact with Monterey County Rape Crisis Center due to abuse by a uniformed service member, a CID investigation directly connected to those disclosures investigating a uniformed service member. Your suggestion that Family Advocacy could not have known these records existed unless I personally handed them to Ms. McCormick is inconsistent with clinical best practices, Army policy, and basic common sense. The Army unequivocally knew I was receiving outside services. In fact, it was a fellow parishioner at my local church, Mr. Anthony Saucier, who is an Army civilian in the S2 admin, who referred me to the sexual assault response coordinator at the Presidio after learning of the unconstitutional bar issued by Lieutenant Colonel Seibel's known collegiate associates in Colonel Klein in December 2023, preventing me from accessing critical and life-saving sexual assault care. Ms. McCormick chose not to disclose or pursue coordination, despite her clearly defined duties and mandates as a Family Advocacy Program licensed clinical social worker. Her failure to act on known information reflects a breakdown, not only in clinical standards, but in basic accountability to a survivor who made a full medical outcry under Army care. Here's the kicker. CID took my witness statements and did a 6-hour interview at the Rape Crisis Center. But then they didn't subpoena the records. They didn't pull them into the medical record. Like, what's the point of having a family advocacy program if you're not reviewing medical data? Likewise. Okay, so her failure to act on known information reflects a breakdown, not only in clinical standards, but in basic accountability to a survivor who made a full medical outcry under Army care. Likewise, my assigned Special Victims Counsel, Captain Perez, failed to fulfill his advocacy role by not informing me that I was responsible for initiating a public records release to CID. This omission, especially in the context of ongoing trauma and institutional complexity, left me without crucial guidance in a critical moment in the investigative process. I will say this. Captain Perez fought his ass off, and he's a junior captain, and he believed me, and he advocated so hard, and he came up against every roadblock. And even when he didn't want to fight, he kept fighting. And I just kept saying to him, I was like, I know I'm going to get railroaded. I know how this ends, Captain Perez. I've been in the Army, an Army wife for 17 years. I've been in this system probably I'd probably been in the system 15 to 12 years longer than him. I was like, I know how this is going to go down, but he still tried, and I appreciated that. And I said, I just want you to remember someday that if you stay in command and you get to the place where you can impact policy, you remember what happened to me, and you remember what happened to you as a junior officer and how you could not like cut through any of this. And he was like, I don't plan to be in the military, that long. I said, okay, well, in private practice, wherever you go, this case will follow you. And and it will always follow him because he's the one that gave me the nickname, the Trebuchet. He's like, I do not want credit. Too bad, so sad. You called me a weapon, which is like, oh. My girlfriend Belle is like, Autumn, you are not well. I was like, clearly, I'm in family court hell. But remember, the truth. What is our motto? She is the weapon. The truth is her ammunition. Okay. To underscore the audacity. Wait, where was I? Okay. To underscore the audacity of your false assertions, Ms. Vogler, Special Agents Marchand and Montgomery could have easily requested that I sign a records release and authorize the transfer of records on June 26, 2024, a date clearly documented in the MCRCC files. On that day, they conducted over 5 hours of on-camera interview with me at the confidential Salinas location of the Monterey County Rape Crisis Center. This is not a routine visit. It was a secure, trauma-informed interview site, and special access had to be coordinated in advance by both Captain Perez, who flew in from Fort Huachuca, and myself through military law enforcement due to the location's designation as an active and highly confidential crisis facility for sexual assault survivors. Every element of that day, the location, the clearance, the hours of recorded testimony, and the physical presence of Army CID demonstrates that the United States Army was fully aware that I was receiving off-post survivor services and had the opportunity, means, and ethical obligation to secure those records at the time of the appointment. So here's the kicker. I had to go to the MCRCC because my ex had me kicked off base and banned from base, so I couldn't use on-post services, which actually probably in the long run is what saved my life, because MCRCC was actually trauma-informed and like helped me. They were the ones who gave me this. Family advocacy program never showed me the power and control wheel. I had to learn this, and it was so using intimidation, using emotional abuse, using isolation, minimizing, denying, and blaming, using children, using male privilege, using economic abuse, using coercion and threats. I needed this. And MCRCC gave it to me, but the Army didn't. Okay. So every element of that day, the location, the clearance, the hours, and recorded testimony, and the physical presence of Army CID demonstrates that the United States Army was fully aware that I was receiving off-post survivor services and had the opportunity, means, and ethical obligation to secure those records at the appropriate time. That they did not and are now attempting to disavow any connection to the records in question is not only false, it is a profound betrayal of the survivor-centered mission you claim to uphold. Family Advocacy Program and the Office of Special Trial Counsel did, in fact, know that I was receiving services off post. The Army had full awareness that I was forced into off-base care only because my abuser, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Seibel, coordinated with his former Penn State College colleagues, Colonel Samuel Klein and Colonel James Kiewit, to have me banned from accessing all military installations across the greater Monterey Bay region. This calculated maneuver deprived me of access to the Family Advocacy Center in person, where I should have been able to receive case management, sexual assault prevention services, and trauma support, medical services, including primary and specialty care, clinic and pharmacy access, blood work and phlebotomy services required for continued treatment, and critically, my military spouse peer network, which was a lifeline during a period of documented trauma and instability. If you're a military spouse and I know you in real life and like we survived this together, I know that God like led, it's not can't go over it, can't go under it. You got to go through it. You guys all know me, and you know that like I don't suffer fools. I always say the quiet part out loud, and I can't help but just say that I have to say the thing, right? Like tonight, somebody was advocating for somebody. He's like, he's not a bad guy. I was like, he's a bad guy. He's actually a bad guy. I was like, at the very least, a dishonest guy. He's like, well, he's not. But he's not a bad guy. He's like, but you just said he lied, so he's a dishonest guy. Well, and my girlfriend's looking at me like, and I'm like, I'm gonna say the thing. So, thank you guys for loving me through this and supporting me through this. I know that you know that it was always gonna be me, because it's girls like me who, well, like we got I'm an Alaskan. That's why people go like, "Aren't you scared?" And I'm like, at the end of the day, no, because I know when like, I know how to skin a moose and I know when the salmon run is. So catch me outside of Anchorage and we'll talk about it then. Like, I'll talk to a trooper. Fuck that. Like it's just Alaska's, we're just a different breed. And our community does look out for each other. I was telling another mom that about this one mom that used to, I'm not going to tell that story. Okay. It also directly interfered with my employment as I was, oh, okay, so this is why I CC'd them. This is why I CC'd the school district and they included this. It also directly interfered with my employment as I was actively teaching at La Mesa Elementary and Marshall Elementary, located on Fort Ord and Presidio of Monterey property. I was effectively removed from my profession, isolated from my support network, and cut off from essential survivor services by a coordinated act of institutional gatekeeping, carried out under the supervision of my ex-husband's peer network of senior Army officers whose spouses were both well aware of the domestic violence occurring in our on-base home and devastatingly failed in their mandated reporting duties as my colleagues within the MPUSD school district, whereas okay, you can tell ChatGPT didn't write this because my grammar's off. I was effectively removed from my profession, isolated from my support network, and cut off from essential survivor services by a coordinated act of institutional gatekeeping, carried out under the supervision of my ex-husband's peer network of senior Army officers whose spouses were both well aware of the domestic violence occurring in our on-base home and devastatingly failed in their mandated reporting duties as my colleagues within the MPUSD school district. Oh, so Colonel Kievit's wife, Amelia Kievit, she still is a mandated reporter, still teaches. She was a counselor or secretary at Monterey High School, where I routinely taught. And there were a couple others, but I'm not going to call them out because they tried, but I don't think Amelia bothered. She did give me her husband's email address and then ghosted and was like, "Ooh, shit." And then Kievit just like covered down for Dan. Okay. I was effectively removed from my position, isolated from my support network, and cut off from essential survivor services by a coordinated act of institutional gatekeeping, carried out under the supervision of my ex-husband's peer network of senior Army officers whose spouses were both well aware of the domestic violence occurring in our on-base home and devastatingly failed in their mandated reporting duties as my colleagues within the MPUSD school district, whereas the administrative offices at MPUSD worked with me hand in hand to ensure my safety for the remainder of the 2023-2024 school year, as I taught at a dozen more schools within the district as one of only 3 super subs selected for our advanced education training and degrees. MPUSD was so accommodating to my needs as a survivor of domestic violence and my desire to build a new life for my children and I was offered a full-time teaching position at Seaside High for the 2024-2025 school year that I had to unfortunately decline due to the military's failure to ensure my safety from an abuser who habitually violated his military protective order that was issued due to his repeated violations of his multiple civilian protective orders. I directly reported the assaults by Lieutenant Colonel Seibel from June 2023 through December 2023 to over 20 plus military officials and civilians at the Presidio, whose names I will be publicly releasing in the season finale of the season 1 of the Trebuchet, or just right now, right here, and continue to report on the present day. None of these leaders took any action to protect my children, my pets, or me. Instead, these men acted to shield and protect a fellow apex predator, perpetuating harm and violating their duty of care to both their subordinates and the civilian community they serve. So no, this is not a case of the Army Family Advocacy Program, CID, or OSTIC not knowing. OSTIC is the Office of Special Trial Counsel, which fellow female military domestic violence and sexual assault survivors, like service members, were instrumental in creating and then were ultimately not protected by. So there's a mom, Master Sergeant Ross out of Arizona, who I've been in contact with, and another mom out of Arizona who was Navy, and they were instrumental in, during their time in uniform, getting OSTIC to be a unit, the Office of Special Trial Counsel, which prosecutes sexual assault and child abuse separately from other military crimes, because it does involve special handling of victims and all that. And then they were denied those same protections, despite the fact that during their time in service, they advocated and helped initiate its creation. because of their experience. Wild, right? I'm not going to say the name, but I had other special victims councils identified to me that the reason why they knew these systems so well is because they had within the military system experienced assault. So no, this is not a case of Army FAP, Family Advocacy Program, CID, or Office of Special Trial Counsel not knowing. They knew. Everyone on the peninsula knew. And the fact that no one documented, coordinated, or followed up is not just an oversight. It is a failure of case management integrity. And it is a deliberate failure at that. This isn't just negligence. It's bureaucratic DARVO. Deny the failure, attack the survivor's memory or process, and reverse roles to paint yourselves as uninvolved when you were, in fact, in the room the whole time. Let me be perfectly clear. If this subpoena originated from an Army-affiliated source and you have gone on record denying such involvement, you may have personally obstructed a survivor's lawful inquiry into potential misuse of legal processes and breach of privileged communications. Such actions would constitute violations under the California Penal Code 135, Destruction or Concealment of Evidence, 118.1, false statements by public officers, and Civil Code 52.1, the Bain Act, all of which carry civil and criminal consequences. So just because you're a civilian employee or a federal employee, just because you're a civilian federal employee doesn't mean that you're not immune from being held accountable for lying, which is what I plan to hold Jillian and all these other bad actors accountable for. But where I'm going with this is, I was going to tell you guys something about this and why it's so important that I documented it. I still don't know who initially subpoenaed those records. I know that it came through my employer, Pebble Beach, and I think it stems, I really do, when I trace it all the way down, I think it stems from my ex-husband's attorney sending a wage garnishment to them, and then them having to be well, she's on disability, and I never got disability, or I was on disability for a little bit, paid disability, and then it ran out because I didn't have enough time worked. But then what was the other thing that they did? Is it workman's comp maybe for injury? I can't remember. Point of the story is I never got anything from it, but they kept digging into this. And then my ex-husband's attorney contacted Evan Allen, I think his name was, at Pebble Beach, their in-house counsel, while simultaneously requesting child support garnishment through the child support and custody programs through California state. So I don't know. I've still got to dig to figure out the who, what, when, where. Was it just, somebody subpoenaed them. Because I wanted to see the records. I'd never seen them. I didn't even know they existed, which again goes back to the complete and total failure of the family advocacy program. Where was I going with that? Gosh, okay, so the tapping really does help because my entire system has calmed down. My doctors had prescribed me anti-anxiety medication, but I've worked so hard to wean off of it so that I can use natural things like tapping to come back into my body, because if I'm a teacher and I have to take a medication to take down my anxiety, how am I going to help a student with that, right? So I have to be able to ground myself and then, be there for my student. And anyways, where should I go going with that? The subpoena of those records. Oh, so I wanted to see them, and then we got them. And then when I submitted them to the court under seal, they then inadvertently published them. So we really are dealing with just these systems that don't know how to protect survivors, and a system that's intentionally hurting survivors. Okay, this isn't just negligence, it's bureaucratic DARVO. Deny the failure, attack the survivor's memory or process, and reverse roles to paint yourself as uninvolved when you were, in fact, in the room the whole time. Let me be perfectly clear. If this subpoena originated from an Army-affiliated source and you've gone, okay, we already did that. I said your position as a MedCom, which is the military, or is the U.S. Army Medical Command, which I actually went to MedCom when I worked for the U.S. Army Center of Military History. I had to just go on a work trip to Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio for a World War I medical conference. And my mom actually came. It was kind of a cool time. She's going through a divorce from my pedo stepdad. So All the memories connect, right? They're just so love it, right? Okay. Your position as MedCom Family Advocacy Program FAP representative does not shield you from liability in the civilian realm. Any interference with protected communications, mandated reporter obligations, or survivor rights may subject you to professional discipline and civilian action under both California and federal law. I await your formal response. Again, I request that you affirm on record that no individual or agency from within the U.S. Army initiated, authorized, requested, or coordinated, or otherwise participated in the subpoenaing of my rape crisis records. If you cannot make that assertion with certainty, then your duty is to investigate, not dismiss, and I welcome any and all additional points of inquiry to which you may direct me. Blah, 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 my name. Okay, so she had said like nobody. So like her response was, "Ma'am, no one in the Army had anything to do with these records requests, and therefore could not control the timing of it." Okay, maybe they didn't have anything to do with the records request, but this is the part that got me to write that email. There is no reason that Captain Perez, Miss McCormick, or Miss Kohler would have known about the records being there either. Yeah, they would, and they do, because they asked me if I had an advocate, because they'd been denied services on base, and they knew full well that I had an advocate off base, which was the MCRCC. So, Miss Volger, like, do your research, which was why I wrote that email. They are not aware or responsible for any records off the installation and would have no reason to know of their existence, much less okay, much less know to tell you to pull them. Yeah, but remember the whole thing that I was pointing out, that my ex-husband utilized the military family advocacy program and Detective Christina Gunter with the Presidio of Monterey Police Department, who is under active investigation for accepting these false reports and certifying them. She both wrote the reports and then certified her reports, which means nobody oversaw that. Like nobody was like, "Yep, that looks good." And she was the one who Klein, weaponized and utilized to continue to push these reports to the DA's office to criminalize me, when in fact no other county would, like no other police or uniform officer would do anything about the chaos that my ex was saying, because they were like, he's not, like, he's a joker. Like they laughed at him. They thought he was a joke. But on the military base where he held power, he was able to influence military police to do his bidding. And the reason why that's so insidious is he used that power to ban me from base. And then when I was trying to get services, I couldn't, because he had banned me from base. So then the military MedCom, which is the Medical Readiness Command based out of Joint Lewis McChord, and this is the family advocacy social work consultant whose salary you pay, is saying, how would they have known about the records? It was off installation, let alone told you to pull them. Well, ma'am, they did a 6-hour interview with me in June 2024 at the MCRCC. So that was documented. Wouldn't they have gone like, hey, how long has she been a patient here? How long has she been receiving services? Do you guys have any notes that we could use to maybe validate this fucking report, because we're not doing our job? You guys, I can't even, like, if you have lived through this chaos, I'm sorry. I'm fighting this for all of us. Okay. And then she said, unless a client comes to us and says, I have these records over here, and do you need them? There's no way we would know about the records. Oh, so you mean like if CID like came and did an interview there and like coordinated it and all that for like weeks and then did it like that? Like, okay. Even if you inform them that you had gone to MCRC, that does not automatically mean that they know there are records. Really? Okay. What about the fact that we like did an interview there? They cannot be expected to know how MCRCC does their record keeping. You'd think they would just like ask while they were there for like 6 hours, right? Like, hey, does this dumbass bitch who's lying about this colonel have any reports? Like she comes here and uses all your tax dollars for free because it's fun to go to a rape crisis center before you have to pay $300 to go see your own fucking kids who you were a primary caregiver for, and you had to make the decision to eat that week, or pay a supervisor who has less qualifications than you to see your own kids. I should find my certificate of like what a good girl I was. That's 2025 of my parent education classes. I'm like, this is bananas. This is bananas. Fun fact, the family advocacy, or no, the community human services in Monterey, California. Just wait till I get into their audit. It's fun. I went down into Robin McCrae's salary, and she gets these bonuses every year that I haven't been able to unpack as to why she gets the bonuses, but they're pretty significant and they're tax free, like to the tune of, I want to say, now again, don't quote my math on this because I'm not great with math, but somewhere between like $0 and $30,000, like somewhere in that $0 to $30,000. And then she makes somewhere between like 0 and $180,000. And I can't remember if it's like 0 to 180,000 with those bonuses or like 0 to like 180,000 plus whatever the bonus is, right? And I'm just giving you a scale because I can't remember. You know, all you would need to do is like look up their taxes because it's a publicly funded company and it's, well, it means a 501c3, but they also get like state and federal funds. So that means that you guys paid for it, just like you paid for this email. Okay. Anyways, but you guys also paid my salary when I was an Army employee, which means that I'm weaponized intelligence working for you. So your tax dollars at work. I'm a history teacher, you guys. I genuinely like enjoy this. And the fact that I can like use this to process my own trauma. That's what my doctor and I keep talking about. He's like, how's it feeling doing your thing, talking live? And I'm like, honestly, it's therapy. Because what I would have done is just like go cry myself to sleep. But instead, I've been on here for 2 hours getting this out and I feel a lot better. I hope you do too. And at the very least, you're not alone. Because I know there's so many other women who've been just completely destroyed by this, especially the military. Okay. She goes, even if you inform them that you had gone to MCRCC, that does not automatically mean they know the records are there. They cannot be expected to know how they do their record keeping. All entities would need you to sign a release of information to even speak to MRCC. Really? Because you guys like came in there and did the interview. So there would have had to have been some sort of transmission of information to get you to a confidential location. And your investigators who brought in recording devices to that, which, man, I cannot wait to get those videos. I do not know why there's a workman's compensation claim or request for these records. I can only go by what I am able to see through the search for that legal agency. You need to follow back up with the legal agency or your employer to find out why records are being requested, as no one in the Army requested them or has anything to do with the request. So we would be unable to answer your question on why they're being requested / subpoenaed. As far as any next steps by CID, you will have to await a response by them, as FAP and MedCom are not legal entities and will have no ability to subpoena any records. I can tell you that the only way for us to have requested any records would have been for you to sign a release allowing us access, which you would have known at the time because Ms. McCormick would have explained to you why we're requesting the release and how the information would be used. I will leave the discussion about CID and Victims Counsel to Captain Hunter Perez, and the CID officers on this email chain, as we have no say on those requests from this FAP lane. And then, oh man, it goes on and on. Let me see. Oh, there's so much more, but I'm like pretty tired right now and I'm going to go to bed. But the good news is that Lillian has this information. And then I back it up with being like, look, here's Klein's, band of base. So it's interesting that this is the only email they chose to disclose because it like kind of like puts them in a good light. And it's like, hey, we did our job and she's not talking shit on us. She's really angry with the Army. So like, go get them. I'm going to wait and see what I want to do with Monterey Peninsula Unified School District because they definitely knew and they could have done better. But is it worth fighting that fight when I could just educate through it and like reach out to them and offer this as an education source? I'll probably do that. Also, obviously, you guys, this is only for adults. Like if you're watching this and be like, God, this bitch cusses a lot for a teacher. Yeah, this is for like other adults going through hell. If I were to teach this to children, obviously I would clean it up. But I'm also a human being and I'm real and authentic, but I do not cuss in the classroom. Never have, never would. I use all kinds of fun language like scallywags and scuffly puffs and Jeroni macaronis and buttonholes and, sass pots and just whatever, right? You got to be funny as a teacher. Okay. Thank you guys for going through this with me and helping me process this trauma. I lost my phone. So if you've been trying to reach me, I'm only going to be on YouTube and maybe iMessages, but my ex got that information. So probably just going to like delete it all and start fresh at the next shelter. Bye.